My name is Burkholder, and Funké Aladejebi, Joshua Schwab-Cartas, and I recently edited a book with Routledge called Facilitating Community Research for Social Change, Case Studies in Qualitative, Arts-Based, and Visual Research. Today, I'm going to speak with Genevieve and Alison about their collaborative chapter with Lap-Xuan, Samira, and Yoriko called Becoming I, We Together as Critical Performance Pedagogy, Facilitating Intra-Actions and Metissage from Inhabiting Living Practice. Their chapter explores a co-curated and co-facilitated emergent and collaborative art exhibit titled Inhabiting Living Space during an international arts-based and artistic research conference. During the conference, PhD students from around the world came together to engage in artistic inquiry. In this chapter, the authors, artists, facilitators, and participants from the conference share their reflections on a collaborative performance called Becoming I Together as Critical Performance Pedagogy. The performance was generated by each entity present in the room. All the participants' bodies and actions, the water, the wool fibers, the pine tree soap, the duration, the gestures, the flux of the movements, the space, the voices, the rhythms, and the echoes. In the chapter, the artists and facilitators share their experiences through interwoven assemblage and métissage. So I have a few questions for you all. The first is, what do we know about facilitation?
Through the book and the call for proposals, I was thinking about how it's so important to weave the ethics of facilitation through the whole research process, and that this becomes necessary to ensure that the outcomes are geared towards social change. I was thinking about that the process itself is so important. Yeah. Alison, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think I thought about this a lot because I think I'm still learning what facilitation means. And I think this exhibition, I really came to understand the importance of language in describing what it is that we're doing. And this exhibition came about because of an experience I had as a PhD student in a similar kind of collaborative exhibition that I was invited to be a part of. But then I was an exhibitor and kind of took the role of, I guess, sort of facilitating it. But it was a different dynamic because I was a participating artist. And then coming into this, Genevieve and I decided to do this, and we started using the word curation, but then we moved away from that and started looking towards the word facilitation because we wanted it to be emergent and collaborative. But I think what came out of it was learning every step of the way what that meant, to invite the collaborators to all be a part in creating this emergent exhibition, while also realizing that ultimately we were putting something together in a very fast-paced environment with 18 people. And so I think a lot of it was about negotiating what that meant. And for me, throughout the process, almost being okay with defining facilitation as I went along, and even in the process of writing, because as Genevieve said, it didn't end at the exhibition. Then you look at the writing process where, again, how do you facilitate something that ultimately has to be cohesive, but you want everyone to be an equal part of it. So yeah, I guess my answer to your question is I'm still figuring that one out.
Same. So what does your chapter teach us about facilitation?
So when we went into it, it was really important that we be willing to, as Alison said, learn about facilitation through the process itself. And we really did want to kind of destabilize hierarchical models of facilitation and curation. And we thought about putting co-curators on the description, but then added facilitation to it. And we used a slash, I think, right? So thinking about curating as a sort of facilitation became really interesting. And that meant that we wanted to facilitated decentralized process, and we had a lot of people working with us. So it wasn't without its tensions, and you have to work with those. But for me, the performance, which is what the chapter is about, the first day, the opening, taught me so much about facilitation, because it was really about giving up our power and letting that emergence take hold. And quite literally, I signed a consent form to kind of give up my power, give up my voice for a performance that Yoriko had done. And so the interactions and the critical performance pedagogy that emerged out of my experience was about giving up that power and honoring that, I think was really important to me. Also, as someone who has had a performance practice in the past, giving up power and emergence is so pertinent in performance art. And so I became really interested in how performance art can also teach us something about facilitation. And then in this article, we present the work through a métissage and creative assemblage. And so the writing itself became collaborative. We each have our own space, our own voice in the work, which I think is really important. And so as I was experiencing the performance, I was surrounded by Lap-Xuan's performance and Samira's performance while Yoriko was cutting my hair, and I became, quote, a piece of wood for the piece, where I couldn't talk and I had to stay still. And yeah, it was really a process of learning to let go and trust. And that's what I learned about facilitation through the chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of extend on that in terms of I think Genevieve and I both came into this together with very different backgrounds, and that really helped. Genevieve has more experience with performance art and social practice art. My background is I paint and I draw, and I teach a lot of painting and drawing classes. And I talk a lot when I teach those courses about giving up control and not knowing. But I became very aware in this exhibition, particularly writing this chapter, with what spaces I'm very comfortable in. And so I envisioned the exhibition as kind of a studio space where we were making like physical objects together and exhibiting them on the wall, inviting people to come in and make together. And that's a very comfortable space for me, even if I don't know what will be made, I'm very comfortable with that. And how as I describe in the chapter, I am not comfortable with performance art. I would never do that. I have so much respect for all performance artists, and what Samira and Lap-Xuan and Yoriko did. It's so brave to me. I would never in my life imagine doing that. And so then facilitating this experience that I, for one, would never feel comfortable or brave enough to do. And also I had no idea what was going to happen. Whereas with making spaces, I sort of can envision what's going to happen. And how it played out was I went to the conference space and introduced what was going to happen to about 100 arts-based researchers, and then led them, I got us a little bit lost, and led them across campus to this exhibition. And I really had no idea what was going to happen. And that was, I think, the biggest test for me in terms of kind of giving up complete control and seeing what would emerge and watching it unfold with about 100, 150 people there. And it's like I could feel there's just something so empowering and beautiful in watching Lap-Xuan begin, and then all the other things emerge and all the people become involved. And it really set the tone for the whole exhibition. So yeah, I guess for me, like what I learned a lot from this chapter was really what it does mean to kind of give up control and facilitation and really allow relationships to emerge, because what emerged between those artists, I didn't foresee. It just kind of happened and was created, and then was created even more with the attendees in that moment.
Thank you. What else do we need to consider in relation to facilitation in a research for social change framework?
Well, I was thinking about the writing process of employing the I or the we a lot lately, and I'm working through that in my doctoral work as well. And of course, that's a big part. That's a big part of the work of Lap-Xuan's work, performance work, where she reiterated the I. And in the writing itself, we did use we at the very beginning in the intro, which I led, and then people edited, co-wrote with me. And then we all took on the I in our respective sections. And I think it's really important not to speak for others and not to make assumptions, of course, and to ultimately co-create and share space for voices to be heard, you know. And I think that's the most important thing that I want to move forward with in relation to ethics and facilitation.
Yeah, I guess I am along the same lines. I guess, you know, big learning process with the exhibition. As I said, there was 18 people, and just kind of understanding what kind of power dynamics might start to play out within that space, and what biases kind of implicitly might come through in those power dynamics. And then I guess that was what I was really alluding to when I was talking about learning what facilitation was, kind of what is the role as facilitator to kind of navigate those power dynamics and conversation, particularly in this kind of space where things were happening very fast. So we wanted open conversation, but decisions had to be made, and how to navigate that was a challenge, and something that I think it will take a lot of working through these questions to continue to figure out, and kind of really kind of look at myself as facilitator within those different situations and dynamics, hopefully with future exhibitions in the same way.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's what was so special about the performance itself, because while there were tensions within the scope of the entire exhibit, and sometimes we did have to kind of, quote, step in, and when we didn't feel as though space was being taken up in an equitable way, but in the performance itself, that was magic, because I feel that the space was being taken up in an ethical way, and equitable way, and giving up our power, you know, was a big part of that, right? But when you're facilitating in other realms and space isn't being taken up by people in an equitable way, then it's also part of one's ethical duty to step in, right? So I felt lucky that this performance exemplified, you know, that creation of space so perfectly, and it's an experience that I will really, really remember for my whole life. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. It really was magic. Like, there was something I don't even know how to describe. Like, it was surprising, which is like, it's really cool to create something that can still surprise you. It was really magic for me.
Yeah, so I wanted to thank Yoriko and Lap-Xuan and Samira for being brilliant artists, and for leading this, and for trusting us to hold that space for them. And I wish they could be here today.
Well, thank you both so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it. And thank you all so much for contributing your beautiful chapter to the book.
Thank you for all your work on
it. I love your work so much. I'm grateful that you included us.
Thank you.